This muscular young man is our protagonist, Renan. Just 3 seconds ago, he was the only level 10 mage of humanity, feared by all. But 3 seconds later, he discovered he was inside a completely different body, and before he could even understand what was happening, Renan's house was stormed by an old man as big as a gorilla. Then, the old man grabbed Renan by the head like a chicken and dragged him outside, and for the sake of making Renan stronger, he tied him tightly to a tree and prepared to perform some martial arts. But this all started one day earlier. In Renhe, the capital of the Antares Empire, the entire city was currently engulfed in the flames of war. At that moment, suddenly, the roar of a monster echoed throughout the capital. Then, it stomped its massive foot down, causing countless soldiers to lose their lives. And after doing this, it opened its mouth to the sky and let out a few roars to display its power. At this point, its form was revealed. The monster's true form was an incredibly enormous, yet somewhat grotesque dragon. Meanwhile, not far away, an old man armed to the teeth in full armor was looking at the battlefield and said, "Over 2 million of our elite troops have been defeated by the demons they summoned." And in response, a soldier behind him quickly added, 200,000 troops were killed by wide-area magic attacks and summoned beasts, and another 300,000 were injured. The Demon King has brought disaster upon our nation, spreading evil throughout the world. Now is the time to end it all. The Demon King will fall at the hands of true heroes. It's all thanks to the great wisdom of His Majesty, the Emperor. Scene change to the Grak area, the center of the palace, the great demon hall of the abyss. At this moment, a voice rang out, "I will not let you continue your evil deeds." The owner of this voice was a young man. He is the hero, Alex von Hannen. Today, he and his comrades are here to destroy the one known as the Demon King, and who is also the one sitting on the throne before them. Seeing that the Demon King before him said nothing, Alex continued, "I will send you to eternal darkness, Demon King Renhat." And this person with the stern face is our protagonist in his original body. He is currently the Emperor of the Antares Empire, Ryfen Hoja Antares. From the opposing side, another voice rang out, "Demon King, we will kill you and put an end to this dark empire." These words came from the sword saint, Sayat. After speaking, he began to generate an aura around his sword, as if ready to strike at any moment. And faced with this threat, Ryfen remained calmly seated on his throne and said with a bored tone, "How sad to hear. I've put so much effort into building this empire. Why do you call it a dark empire when its name is Antares? The sun rises and shines here too." And as soon as he finished speaking, a powerful voice roared, "You are raising demons here. If we just kill you, those evil monsters will naturally disappear." These words came from the Fist King, Teslan. After speaking, he was burning with fighting spirit. But his words made Renan on the other side sneer in contempt. "What the hell are you talking about? Evil nature? They've always been this way. I just taught them human tactics. They've lived half their lives being mistreated, and I only taught them how to fight back. Now they're called corrupt and depraved. They're just doing the same things humans do." Thinking of this, he asked, "Have you already defeated the 4 heavenly kings?" The sword saint, Siat, heard this and replied, "Yes, those filthy ORCS weren't even worthy of me drawing my sword." Turning back to Reifenhat, after hearing this information, he roared in anger, "Are you saying my brave ORC warrior, Tothit, is dead?" At this point, he recalled some memories of the ORC race. Although ORCS look ferocious, they only hunt and gather to survive, and most importantly, they never betray their own kind. They protect the weak and fight against the powerful, so how can you call them monsters? They may not bathe often, but they're not as foul-smelling as you claim. And while he was still lost in thought, Teslan on the other side started laughing and said, "The 4 heavenly kings, you say? Ha ha, that elf. That abomination has paid a heavy price." Hearing this, Rifen could only weep. "Garuda think is dead too? I know goblins look a little scary, but he's seriously exaggerating. They're just precious goblins of nature who immerse themselves in it to train their minds." But before Ryfen could even mourn his goblin friend, the Saintess Philin from below delivered another piece of sad news. The dwarf who worshipped a dark god has also been brought to the light of justice. Hearing this, Ryfen could only cover his face. Malin is gone too. Since when was the god of the Apat dwarves a dark god? These arrogant fools, do they think everyone besides the prophet and the 12 gods they worship is evil? And the sorrow continued to wash over Ryfen as the Mage of Light, JL, stated coolly, "I also sent a fallen dark elf back to her ancestors. She was nothing before my magic." Hearing this, the rage within Ryfen could no longer be contained. Series 2, do you all have a death wish? Ryfen began to roar with fury, and at the same time, his body erupted with an incredibly powerful aura, and the group of heroes in front of him were just waiting for this, as they immediately started spouting nonsense. "You've finally shown your true colors. That dark elf wench was already deep in darkness. We show no mercy." To things like that. Ryfin listened and then growled. "A dark elf? Maybe she was a bit darker than you, but that's because humans deforested so much that she had to migrate to barren lands. You see, an elf of noble, pure blood is a dark elf just because she got a sunburn." Ryfin's voice was now filled with rage. And the heroes on the other side also knew the battle was about to begin, so they immediately channeled their power to prepare for combat, especially the hero, Alex. Before throwing down, he still had to spout a few cliché lines. "I will avenge the fallen with this sword," and his words were enough to make Ryfin completely snap. "You refuse to listen to what I'm saying? Then who will avenge my losses?" Alex, on the opposite side, heard this and shouted, "How despicable, Ryfin! If it weren't for that dark power of yours, the monsters wouldn't have fallen to the dark side. They would have lived normal lives as fate intended." Hearing this, Ryfin knew that this group no longer wanted to hear explanations. There was no other way. They wouldn't listen to what I was telling them. Other beings who don't want to live as slaves and desire a peaceful, free life are seen as cruel and deserving of death. If that's the case, then I will truly become the demon king you've been rambling about. As he spoke, Ryfin's body erupted with a terrifying power. Then, the floor beneath, the hero's feet exploded, sending them flying. "No, my name is Ryfen. I am an ordinary archmage, although becoming an archmage is already not ordinary. Humans never considered other species with the same level of intelligence as their equals. Elves are seen as beautiful servants who can live for a very long time. Dwarves with their strong hands are forced into the mines. Orcs are used for menial labor as servants. Goblins are harvested as ingredients for potions. They are seen as slaves with no right to resist. I was so surprised when I discovered their forgotten civilization and the truth behind it. After that, I got to know them and shared our cultures. I learned spiritual magic from the elves and shamanism from the goblins. And by combining them, I became the first person in history to unlock 10 magic circles. I still kept in touch with them. The ones who changed my worldview, I couldn't accept them being treated like slaves and began to rescue them. But it became harder and harder to deceive the humans as my territory gradually expanded. Human knights also organized crusades against my lands. They kept attacking, destroying everything, pillaging, and forcing me to migrate. All I did was fight back, but in the end, my territory became larger than ever before. It just kept growing and growing, eventually becoming the Antares Empire. I founded this nation, but that doesn't mean I hate humanity. I just believe that other beings also have the right to live and pursue happiness, just like humans. That's why I never organized an army to take revenge on humanity. But what was bound to happen, happened. As soon as all the citizens of even Antares admitted this was a wonderful place to live, yet those people claimed it was because the Demon King's magic had manipulated them. I knew they thought that way ever since I formed the Orc and Goblin army. They aren't exactly beautiful creatures, but to kill them just for that reason? Unacceptable. At this thought, Ren let out a resounding roar. "I have a duty to protect my kingdom. If there is any law that permits this slaughter, I will erase that law and replace it." As he spoke, Ren began to use his magic, controlling countless broken stone fragments and firing them like cannonballs. And that bargain bin hero, Alex, was the first to get hit. His entire body was sent flying like a rag doll after taking the hit. I can't even understand what kind of hero this is, getting taken out after just one hit from the boss. Seeing him sprawled out cold after a single blow, Refenhart sneered. "I'm pretty sure you were called a hero for mastering both the sword and shield, but in reality, you haven't mastered either and have no real strength at all." At the same time, Ren thought to himself, his strength is decent but not great. Heroes usually live until the end of the story, but that's only in stories. In reality, they die easily. Now, only the Fist King Teslan remains, the one known for his incredible physical strength, Ren thought as he began to stare at the colossal body seething with anger. This was an incredibly strong opponent, so he had to be careful. Defeating the others wasn't difficult, but Teslan was different. This guy was frighteningly strong, making him very hard to beat. And just as Refenhart had that thought, the Fist King Teslan charged forward like a cannonball, and with just one punch, he shattered the entire floor into countless pieces. But luckily, Ren managed to dodge just in time. However, the Fist King Teslan wasn't about to let him go. Right after missing, he charged in once more. Just like that, the battle continued, and after a while, their fight had moved all the way outside the castle. At this moment, Ren was standing on the castle wall, trying to locate Teslan after the recent explosion, and right after that, his eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets, because that giant gorilla had closed the distance in an instant, launching a flying elbow strike. Seeing this, Refenhart gritted his teeth and began to cast some kind of spell. Teslan on the other side roared, We will be victorious, Demon King Refenhart. After speaking, he decided to pull back his elbow and deliver a powerful chop instead. It was unclear what kind of magic Refenhart was trying to use, but it seemed the casting time was a bit too long. Because before he could even use it, Teslan's hand slammed right into his head, causing him to cough up blood. And even though it hurt like hell, for the sake of his pride, Ren still managed to choke out. Is that all you've got? I blocked it with my magic. Seeing this, the Fist King Teslan had to give him props. As expected of the Demon King, you're pretty tough. Turning back to Refenhart, the gorilla's last blow seemed to have driven his neck into his shoulders. Damn it. My spine is shot. It's going to break soon. I need to deal with him first, but there's no way I can beat this gorilla. Looking over at Teslan, his body was now enveloped in the aura of a Super Saiyan 2, and he slowly advanced on Ren, saying, I will punish you myself. All right, you win, Ren said while trying to stop the bleeding from his head. And faced with Ren's surrender, Teslan said, I believe everyone will now be freed from your demonic curse. The clueless Teslan said this nonchalantly, not knowing that his words would make Ren instantly change his mind. I was about to give up, but now I've changed my mind? Freed from a curse? Are you saying that being enslaved is their destiny? I can never accept that. This is insane. With that thought, Ren pulled out some kind of circular magic device and began to explain it to his opponent. This is the Eye of Space-Time, a magical artifact I found in an ancient ruin. It's an artifact containing such immense magical power that even a 10-circle archmage like myself cannot decipher it. Hearing this, Teslan on the other side knew something was wrong and quickly shouted, What are you planning to do? For some reason, Refenhart actually answered him truthfully. The space-time reversal spell, a spell capable of turning back, to reverse time and deceive the gods. Stop me if you can, Martial King! With that, Rifen began to pour all of his power into this artifact. I don't know if it'll work, but I have nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, the Martial King charged straight at him. Rifen, busy channeling his mana, couldn't possibly dodge. I can't die! I can't just die like this! These thoughts repeated over and over in Rifen's mind, and just then, the Martial King's fist collided with the artifact, resulting in a terrifying explosion, and both of them were swallowed by the blast. Scene change. In a certain forest, in a clearing, stood a 2-story wooden cabin with smoke billowing from its chimney. And inside this house, a lazy bum was just waking up. This sound, this warm feeling, this comfortable sensation. Am I still alive? Did I succeed? The spell I hadn't even half deciphered. I'm truly a genius. I didn't even think it would work. Then, the owner of this voice looked around and wondered, where am I? It seems I succeeded in traveling through time, but I've never been to a place like this in my past. What age did I even return to? Rifen thought, scratching his ear. And soon after, Rifen looked at his muscular body in the mirror and commented, with a physique like this, most young men would cry their eyes out. But who is this anyway? Rifen wondered aloud. Then, he looked at his hands and mumbled, what are these calluses? This body is all brawn and scars, it's disgusting. A mage only needs to be proficient in magic. What's with this useless six-pack? It's a bit strange for me to judge myself like this, but my body when I was young made several girls fall head over heels. And after I grew up, I became even cooler and made a few elves shed tears. Thinking this, Rifen looked at himself in the mirror again and lamented, what's with this idiotic face? Where did my chiseled face go? Now my body looks more like an actual statue. What on earth happened? Did my time reversal spell fail? Is that why I'm in the body of some random nobody? If so, that means this isn't the past and I'm still in the present. But instead, I've swapped places with the soul of this body? Let's see. This body has thick brown eyebrows, resilient eyes, and a stubborn mouth, if his build were bigger and he grew a beard. And as he thought this, a certain figure faintly appeared in Rifen's mind. Don't tell me this is the indomitable Martial King, Teslan. As he realized this, Rifen's face twisted in horror, and at that very moment, a loud shout echoed from outside. Teslan, the sun is already high. What are you doing in there? Why haven't you come out yet? And the owner of this voice was an old man bigger than a gorilla. His appearance scared Rifen to death, and as soon as he stepped into the room, he grinned widely at Rifen. Today is going to be another great day. Faced with this cheerful attitude, Rifen looked bewildered and asked, Sir, who are you? Hearing this, the old man bent down, stroking his beard as he observed Rifen. Humph, why are you looking at me like this is the first time you've ever seen me? I'm asking because I genuinely don't know, Rifen said hurriedly. In response, the old man stroked his beard, clicked his tongue a few times and said, Tisk, tisk, Teslan, haven't you already used the amnesia excuse 2 times? You should know that this excuse won't work anymore. After saying that, he casually grabbed Rifen by the head and said cheerfully, Now then, let's head out to the training ground. Wait, training? What training? Ryfen cried out. At the same time, he was racking his brain trying to figure things out. Given the situation, this must be Teslan's master, the strongest martial artist the continent has ever known, the martial king, Jorg Grom Protesi. And not long after, Ryfen found himself tied up like a pig to a large tree trunk. Hey, old man, will you please just listen to what I have to say? Ryfen screamed helplessly. And of course, to the martial king Jor, his words went in one ear and out the other. Be quiet, you're far too talkative today. As he spoke, he pulled out a cloth and tightly gagged Ryfen's mouth. Then, he casually picked up a bamboo stick from a pile of canes and said, All right, it's time to start training. And then, to Ryfen Hat's horror, he slammed the stick right into his stomach, making the poor guy shed tears of pain. What made it even more infuriating was that his mouth was gagged, so he couldn't even scream or curse. What the hell is happening? Ren wondered in agony. But before he could think any further, Joret from across him unleashed a relentless barrage of strikes. He even turned his face away, as if not wanting to witness his disciples' suffering. At this point, Ren was already thinking about his last will. Looks like this life is over for me. Siri, goodbye. Back with Jorat. After giving Ren a few more whacks, he noticed something strange. His arm felt a bit strange just now, much softer than before. Did he really lose his memory? Our martial arts school is the best place to train for strength anyway, so you just need to train diligently. It's not a big deal, so the solution is simple. We'll just continue as planned. With this in mind, he even began to swing the stick faster. This kind of training is nothing for him. After a good beating, you'll be back to normal in no time. Jorat began to train his disciple with gritted teeth, and at the same time, he didn't forget to lecture Ren. The reason humans use weapons is because they are weak. Their bodies are too frail, forcing them to rely on armor and weapons. Isn't that right? Although Ren couldn't speak, he couldn't help but question this internally. Wait a minute. Why is he calling people stupid for knowing how to use tools? And as if hearing Ren's inner voice, Joret leaned in close to his disciple and roared, It's all just excuses. That's the disgrace of a man who cannot overcome his own weakness. A warrior trains to overcome their weaknesses. This old man's fierce expression, coupled with his thunderous voice, scared Ren deathly pale. This is the first time in my life I've ever heard such a simplistic and idiotic philosophy. As for Jorat, the more he lectured, the more worked up he became. By now, the whites of his eyes were showing as he yelled, Humans are like steel. The more they are beaten, the stronger they become, just like steel. Having said that, he snapped the bamboo stick in his hands in two. Ren, on the other hand, could only endure these words with silent fury. This crazy old geezer, how are people anything like steel? Back to Jorat, all of his battle-crazed energy was about to be unleashed on Ren. Somehow, he had already produced another bamboo stick and told him, You are the disciple I chose. Trust me, your body has no limits. You can become steel. At this point, he felt overjoyed to have met someone like Ren Teslan. Not everyone can grow strong through training, just as only high-quality iron can be forged into steel. Only a select few can attain a body as hard as steel. And I have met you, Teslan. With that thought, he slammed the bamboo stick right into Ren's face, making him gag. But it still wasn't over. Jorat then began to use 120% of his power, determined to forge his disciple into steel. A tempest of blows rained down upon Ren's body. But on the bright side, while the old man dished out the pain, he also offered plenty of encouragement. Think of the ocean. The ocean swallows all things, yet it does not change. The ocean is inside you. Bring forth the ocean within. And faced with these words of encouragement from the old man, Ren could only think one single thought. What a load of bull. But that was only his thought at the time, because by the end of the steel forging session, he really did see the sea and the ocean his master had mentioned. And once Ren saw the sea, old man Jorat decided to let him go. That's enough for today. Go inside and get some rest. It was only then that Ryfen Hat realized he was still alive, that he hadn't died. I took such a beating, and I'm still not dead. Ren muttered like he was having a breakdown, then he hugged himself and said, Thank you, body, for being this tough. Thank you so much. And that evening, to help his disciple's body recover more quickly, old man Jorat prepared a special bath for him. But when Ren saw the ingredients being added to the tub, he was astonished. Oh my god, those are Jaren leaves and petals. This is a healing tonic, isn't it? An entire vial of potion. A healing potion costs 10 silver coins. But I never expected to see a whole bathtub full of it. I've heard that queens bathe in milk for beautiful skin, but even that is nothing compared to this. But why bathe in medicine, Reneth wondered. Seeing this, Jorat, who was beside him, replied, What do you mean? After forging steel, you have to cool it down, don't you? And this old man's words made the 10th Circle Grand Mage's mind start to work. After training my bones and muscles to the brink of death, I would recover quickly by using the power of magic and healing potions. If so, my body would heal before it collapses and grow even stronger. So that means this training method isn't completely insane. I fought Teslan myself, so I know his body, just how tough it is. Teslan must have repeated this training regimen over and over since he was a child. With that thought, Reneth sat down completely, letting the medicinal water envelop his entire body. Then, he also wondered, I know for a fact this is the past. So what happened to my original self during this period? Does a younger Reneth exist? Can two identical souls exist in the same timeline? If so, I can form two hypotheses. First, the future Reneth, me, who is currently in Teslan's body, coexists with the younger Reneth. Second, the soul of the martial king, Teslan, is inside the younger Reneth's body. Time flew by, and the next morning, as soon as he woke up, Reneth was greeted by a mountain of meat that Jorat had prepared. Eat all of this. An overworked body needs to be nourished, Jorat said with a smile. Hearing that, Reneth dug in and ate like crazy, and right after he finished, Jorat took him mountain climbing. All right, now we'll go for a little walk to digest. And at the old man's pace, it wasn't long before he had already shot up to the summit, while Reneth was still struggling to climb up. And because he was so slow, this gorilla of a master started to complain. My disciple, are you tired? Or perhaps we should continue this morning's training. As he spoke, he held a stick in his hand, as if ready to help him forge steel the moment Reneth said yes. And of course Reneth quickly refused. Not at all, master. Damn it, how much longer do I have to endure this barbaric training? Reneth thought to himself while doing sit-ups on the edge of a cliff. This horrendous training continued, and by that evening, his body was completely drained, so much so that he could only shed tears from one eye. Afterward, he curled up in a corner and contemplated his future. Will the future be affected? Assuming my younger self still exists, what will happen when our two souls meet? The uniqueness of every soul is an immutable law that underpins this world. Worst case, my soul will disappear, but the young Reneth won't become a mage for another 10 years. He must be studying very hard right now, just absorbed in his books in the magic tower of Delphia, so he likely won't cross paths with me. But what if Teslan has possessed my body? No. Even so, his progress would surely be slower than mine. Teslan's strength comes from torturous physical training with his master. With my weak body, he wouldn't be able to accomplish much. As long as he hasn't reached the 10th circle, this kind of training requires a master's guidance. There's no way he could do it alone. Wait, with Teslan's level of mastery, he might actually find a way. But regardless, the first thing I have to do is escape this prison. With that, Reneth peeked his head out to survey the area, and as soon as he confirmed that the old gorilla wasn't there, he took off running. I'm getting out of here. No matter what I have to do tonight, I will escape, Reneth silently swore to himself. And just as his resolve was peaking, Jorat's voice suddenly echoed from up ahead. My disciple, where are you off to? And that voice made Reneth's eyes pop out of his head. He had no idea when, but old man Jorat was already sitting right in front of him. This freakish old man, when did he get here? Reneth wondered internally. At the same time, Jorat, sitting opposite him, stroked his beard in thought and said, You've been quiet for 1 or 2 months now, and now you're trying to run away again? This makes the 9th time, right? You're about to hit double digits. Hearing this, Reneth hastily tried to explain, I really wasn't. It's that Teslan guy. My name is Ryfin, and I'm a mage. And at these words, old man Jorat started stroking his chin and asked, Oh, you have a new backstory? Last time, you said you were from another world, and that you'd met dragons and gods. And before that? I'm from the Huan Continent Kingdom in the east. There's a place called the Murim. You were the leader of a cult, but were reincarnated or something, right? As the old man spoke, Ryfin broke out in a cold sweat over Teslan's incredible tall tales, turning to Jorat. At that moment, the old man cheerfully grabbed Ryfin by the head and said, This one seems more convincing. You've improved. Now go home and sleep. Then, without waiting for Ryfin's consent, he grabbed him by the head and dragged him home. Meanwhile, Ryfin could only curse helplessly in his mind. Damn, old man, I failed today, but I'll definitely succeed next time. I admit my escape attempt failed today, but don't think I'll be locked up here forever. Ryfin gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with resentment. And just as he had planned, the very next morning, Ryfin decided to escape. But no matter what method he used, the old man found him with ease. Whether he took the mountain path or the river route, and the reason was incredibly simple. Because back when he was a disciple, he had gone through the exact same thing, so he understood perfectly. Just try to endure a little longer. I have 30 years of experience preventing disciples from running away. There's never been a single one in history who hasn't faked an illness to escape. Jorat cheerfully shared his experiences with Ryfin. But Ryfin wasn't listening to a single word. Though after 2 failed escape attempts, he had at least accepted reality. I've given up on the idea of escaping the man known as the Demon King, because giving up isn't in his vocabulary, and even if I got lucky and escaped, he would chase me to the ends of the earth. It's better to just pass his trials fair and square and then leave the mountain. And so, Riffin's days of being beaten and forged like steel continued. Time flew by quickly, and 2 years had passed since Riffin began training with Jorat. At this moment, the old man's cheerful voice rang out, "You did it! You finally awakened your own power!" Following his gaze, Riffin's entire body was now enveloped in a deep orange aura. As for Riffin himself, he was so astonished he couldn't believe it. Because it was said that even the Sword Saint Cyrus only awakened his aura in his late 20s, yet this body wasn't even 20 years old. And at that moment, on the opposite side, Jorat saw his dazed expression and laughed excitedly, saying, "Why are you just standing there stunned? Achieving this result while training with me is perfectly normal. If you stimulate your survival instincts and train your body, your will to live will enhance your life force and the power to release your aura. Let's move on to the next step." Hearing this, Riffin asked, "Can I learn normal martial arts now? What will we be training now, master?" As he said this, he felt a flicker of hope, wondering if he could finally leave the mountain. And in response to his expectations, the Fist King Jorat began gathering aura into his fist and said excitedly, "Now we spar, of course?" Judging by his attitude, it seemed he had been waiting for this day for a very long time. As for Riffin, he was stunned, silent, after hearing that. And immediately after, his blood-curdling scream echoed across the mountain, followed by a massive explosion. And just like that, another 3 years flew by. The scene shifts to the southern part of the Vasily Kingdom, to Mount Lat Chirai. This was an incredibly treacherous mountain. At a waterfall on the mountain, Riffin was standing there, practicing something. He was seen standing opposite the waterfall's cliff face, breathing slowly. Then, he mumbled, "Calamity sound wave." And right after these words, and once it reached a certain threshold, he threw a punch straight at the cliff face in front of him. The punch was so powerful it broke the air wall, creating a shockwave that shot straight into the cliff face, causing it to crack into many pieces. But this result still didn't quite satisfy Riffin. Is 3 layers my limit? If I can just perfect it a little more, I can use. Alright, that last technique is called the Calamity Wave. It's a fatal blow that focuses power into a single point on the body. And because when you accumulate aura, it resembles a sound wave. It's called the Calamity Wave. The ultimate stage of this technique is the 9th wave. A punch that releases 9 layers of sound waves is capable of killing even gods. But the Teslan I know could only manage 7 waves. Even Master Jarrett never reached the 9th level. The old man said I had to reach at least the 4th level before he'd let me leave the mountain. It's been a long time since I've been back to the village. He's probably grabbing a few drinks before he shows up. The old me would have definitely used this opportunity to run away and end these days of physical training. As this crossed his mind, Ren began to stare into the palm of his hand, thinking about something. Next, he held both hands out in front of him and began to gather the magical energy in his body, forming a ball of light. Gathering energy in my palm, transforming air into a projectile to annihilate the enemy. Air bullet. After speaking, Riffin H launched the orb at a nearby tree trunk, and its power was underwhelming, barely leaving a few marks on the tree trunk. Riffin H scratched his head in embarrassment upon seeing the result and said, "Well, this body isn't helping me at all. Even though I clearly remember all my magical knowledge, my mana is completely stagnant in this rock-hard body of Teslans, which also has absolutely no aptitude for mathematics. I don't know if I can even become a mage again." And just as Riffin H said this, he sensed something and glanced to the side. This presence isn't human," Riffin H muttered. And then, immediately after, the figure of a green-skinned youth appeared on the path in front of Riffin H. Upon seeing this person's arrival, Ren's face grew serious as he thought, "An orc? Judging by his size, he must be 3 or 4 years old. He seems to be in a rush. Did he just escape from the arena?" Turning to the green-skinned youth, the boy looked at Ren with an extremely worried face and said, "Human, if you pretend you didn't see me, I won't kill you." To Riffin H, this young orc's threat had absolutely no effect on him. He's only saying that because he thinks I look friendly. Besides, despite the power disparity, he chose to flee rather than fight. With this in mind, Ren spoke up, asking, "Hey orc, is someone hunting you?" He spoke these words in a strange language. Hearing this, the young orc across from him exclaimed in astonishment, "How can a human like you know our language? I was just lucky enough to learn it," Ren said with a smile. Turning back to the green-skinned youth, after learning that Ren could speak his people's language, he let out a sigh and said, "Thank goodness, yes, I'm being hunted." Hearing this, Riffin H's interest was piqued, and he offered, "I can help you. Do you trust me?" The young orc replied, "If you know the language of the orcs, then you are my brother. I can sense your sincerity." But brother, helping me will put you in danger. This considerate attitude from the green-skinned youth made Ren H think with some delight. He speaks so pleasantly, he must come from a good bloodline. After this thought, Ren H reassured him, I can handle it, trust me. With that, the 9th level Archmage began to use his meager amount of magical energy to cast a spell. And as soon as the spell was complete, the large crater created by Rifen H's earlier technique was enveloped in a purple barrier. He then turned to the young orc and said, Hide in there, my magic will help you stay hidden. Seeing that Ren H could use magic, the green-skinned youth was completely astonished and asked, You're a mage? Ren H, surprised by the question, asked back, Is it strange for me to be a mage? No, it's not that. It's just your body, the youth said awkwardly, glancing at Rifen H's ridiculously muscular physique. Anyone looking at him would find it hard to believe he was a mage. Putting that aside, the young orc then entered the cave and said, I am very grateful for your kindness. And just as he disappeared behind the barrier, a voice echoed from behind Rifen H. This is so annoying. Do I really have to deal with all this mess for a few measly silver coins? Rifen Hot, hearing the commotion, turned to look, and following his gaze, a group of people began to emerge from the forest, led by a long-haired man with an incredibly arrogant face. As soon as he saw Rifen, he arrogantly said, Hey, you there, have you seen an orc run through here? And as soon as he finished speaking, a bearded blonde man behind him added, We'll reward you with 1 gold coin if you tell the truth. The long-haired man, hearing his comrade's offer, quickly turned and whispered, Hey, what are you talking about? I don't have any gold coins. Who would actually give it to him? I'm just tricking him so he'll spill the beans, the blonde man said, laughing slyly. Turning back to Rifen, faced with their question, he bluntly replied, Haven't seen a thing. Are you sure about that? The long-haired man asked suspiciously. And at the same time, an old man behind him noticed the footprints on the ground and said, Aren't these orc tracks? He must be here. Search for him, the long-haired man commanded. After hearing them, Rifen felt extremely embarrassed. Damn it, my magic was too simple to erase the footprints. Rifen thought to himself and then coldly said, This is my home, I can't let you in. On the other side. The long-haired man, hearing him say that, angrily retorted, Are you crazy? A forest dweller like you dares to block our path. Meanwhile, his blonde companion, seeing his hot-headedness, worriedly said, Bright, this guy doesn't seem normal. What's there to be afraid of? There are over 10 of us, Bright yelled, then began to threaten Rifen. Hey, you brat, stop being stubborn and get lost. You've got a sturdy body, I'll give you that. But even so, you're still just a kid. Turning to Rifen, after hearing the threats from Bright, he recalled the teachings of his master, Jirat. My fists are weapons of destruction. A single swing can take down a man. So what should I do? Master, show proper mercy to the weak. For someone whose fists are stronger than any weapon, wielding one is my act of mercy. And following his master's teachings, Rifen decided to be merciful to these men by using some kind of magic. At that moment, a magic circle began to appear at his feet. Then, from the center of this magic circle, a handle began to rise up. Rifen then grabbed this handle and slowly pulled it upwards. What appeared before everyone's eyes was a stone staff with 4 square edges. Next, Rifen looked towards the group with a dangerous glint in his eyes and said, Don't worry, if I use this, you won't die. The hunters on the other side, after seeing Rifen pull out a weapon, all charged forward to attack him. That kid's holding a staff? Does he want to declare war on us? How skilled can a little brat be? And facing the attack of these weaklings, Rifen flashed a bright smile, then began to strike without a hint of mercy. Each hunter that rushed forward was met with a single blow, sending them flying. At the same time, he also thought, My school focuses on fist and foot techniques, but that doesn't mean we don't train with weapons. However, the true purpose of this staff isn't for combat, but for disciplining students. Its characteristic is that when you strike an opponent all over their body, they can't fight back and can only lie still and endure it. No matter how much you hit them, the opponent won't die. At most, they'll just break a few bones. Turning back to the group of hunters, after seeing the first ones who charged get beaten to a pulp, they angrily roared. Damn it, everyone attack him at once. After saying that, the entire group rushed forward to gang up on Rifen, but the result was no different. Before they could even touch Rifen, he swung his staff and sent them flying, coughing up bile. But at least they had managed to attract Rifen's attention. And taking this opportunity, the blonde man swung the sword in his hand straight at his back. But unfortunately for him, as soon as his sword made contact with Rifen's back, it couldn't budge an inch further. In fact, the sword itself was now bent and twisted in a bizarre way. And after seeing the new shape of his sword, the blonde man's eyes widened in disbelief. Huh? What in the world happened to my sword? But before he could even finish wondering, Ren smashed a club into his face. At that moment, even Ren himself was completely surprised. Even a sword couldn't cut through it. Is this really a human body? Even though it's my own body, I'm still amazed by it. And with that, the one-sided beatdown continued. Don't worry, you guys won't die. No killing, no taking lives, you won't have to die. Riefenhat thought to himself as he began to swing the club in his hand faster, eventually causing it to snap in two under the pressure. By now, the group of hunters were all collapsed on the ground like dead dogs. Every single one of them was clutching their arms and legs in pain. At this point, only the long-haired guy hadn't received Ren's special care, so he was still able to stand. After seeing all his comrades go down, he trembled as he pointed his sword at Ren and stammered, "You bastard, state your name. Why should I? You can't even hold your sword properly. It wouldn't be fair if your comrades got beaten, and you didn't, right?" With that, Riefenhat started wailing on him with the club. And as a result, not long after he'd had his fill of the beatdown, Ren allowed them to get lost. "Thank you, sir," Bright said hastily, and the whole group scrambled away immediately, as if they were afraid the huge guy in front of them would change his mind. Turning back to Reffen, he looked at the club that had broken in two in his hand and muttered, "Beating them up was actually fun, but it's a shame all good things must come to an end. Maybe I should take on a few disciples and give them some friendly beatdowns." And without even realizing it, Reffen had been influenced by the sect's philosophy. Back in the present, after the group had left, the young orc man also came out. "Thank you, my benefactor. I will never forget this kindness. I will definitely repay you," he said, bowing his head. Seeing this, Ren happily replied, "To have a warrior like you bow to me is a true honor. You saved my life and opened a new path for me. From now on, you will be my advisor. When you need it, consider me your sword." In orc culture, an advisor is the highest position, one who is respected and obeyed, similar to how human knights serve their lords. Turning to the young orc, he bowed his head and said, "May I know my benefactor's name?" As if by reflex, Riefenhat immediately said, "I am Tess," but he stopped himself right there. Then, Riefenh stroked his chin, thinking for a second or two, then said confidently, "My name is Reffen Watares." The young orc heard this and muttered, "Reffen Watares. I will remember this name." Turning back to Reffen, after seeing the green-skinned youth preparing to leave, he asked, "This world is ruled by humans. Where do you plan to go? Where do you think you can go? This continent is vast. There will be a place for me to rest my feet. If not, I'd rather die wandering than die a slave," he said. Hearing this, Ren had offered him some advice. "Go past the Larva Mountains, then walk south for another 2 weeks. There's a wasteland there. It's a place your people call the Land of Hope. Go there. Other orcs are also hiding there. The Blue Bear tribe. I also have business to attend to." The green-skinned young man heard this and turned to leave. "Then I'll be going as well," he said. Just then, Ren H., who was behind him, remembered something and shouted, "Ah, that's right. What's your name?" The young orc happily turned back and said, "I am the son of Koda, the heir of Latex. My name is Tathi." After saying that, he left immediately. Hearing this, Renhat was left dumbfounded. He's Tathi, one of the 4 heavenly kings, the great warrior Tathi. He's the chieftain of the Blue Bear tribe, who later becomes the great leader of the orcs. I wonder if the real Teslan met Tathi in the previous life. But with that personality, he would never have helped an orc. It seems the cogs of fate have turned. Destiny is truly a fascinating thing. As he thought this, memories of his old comrades flooded into Renhat's mind. Someday, I will meet my friends, my brothers, again, the descendants of those brave warriors. Time once again flew by, and half a year had passed since the strange encounter with Tathi. Right now, Renhat and Jorat were in the middle of a sparring match. "Take this, disciple!" Jorat let out a resounding roar and threw a punch forward. Following his fist was a pillar of light. Was unleashed. This was the ultimate chi blast technique. Renhat, who was in front, saw this and quickly shouted, "Whoa, that's a bit much." After saying that, he hurriedly swung his arm forward to use the spiral protection skill. This technique swirls his aura into a circle to create a defensive shield, and thanks to that, he managed to survive the old man's technique, although he was still pushed back a bit. Jorat, seeing this scene, happily said, "Good, very good. Your protection has reached its peak. I still remember it like it was yesterday. You were still insisting that Teslan was Renhat after I beat you senseless. That was 6 years ago. Why are you still bringing it up, master?" Renhat complained. Hearing this, Jorat stopped reminiscing and thoughtfully said, "It's been 10 years since I started teaching you, hasn't it? You're much stronger than you were back then, but why are you still so tiny?" Jorat began to look at Renhat with a puzzled expression. Hearing this, Renhat stammered a bit. "What do you mean by that? Tiny? I'm over 6 feet 2 inches tall." And in response to his words, the martial king Jorat roared, "Nonsense. Members of the Cheonbium sect must be at least 6.5 feet tall. The Teslan I once met was around 7.5 feet tall," turning towards Jorat. At that moment, he grabbed Renhat's head and spat all over his face. Have you been diligently following the breathing technique I taught you? It must be due to individual body types. Master, Renhat said hastily, while thinking to himself, are you crazy? I don't want to get any bigger. No way. If I use that breathing technique, my body will look totally weird. Back to the martial king. After hearing his disciples' words, he accepted it. I suppose so, as long as you're still sturdy with that tiny frame of yours. All right then, hurry up and show me the final results. Begin. Following his words, Renhat jumped down onto the frozen lake in front of them and closed his eyes to focus his mind. And when he opened his eyes again, Renhat stomped his foot and shot straight up into the sky. And while still in midair, he gathered aura into his right arm to use the Calamitous Sound Wave skill. His target was the frozen lake below. Calamitous Sound Wave. 4th stage. Upon the impact of the punch, the lake's surface began to crack into countless pieces. Finally, it exploded, sending shards of ice flying everywhere. Marshal King Jorat, after witnessing his disciples' performance, laughed heartily. "Ha, excellent! With this move, you won't be defeated by anyone." Meanwhile, Renhat was ecstatic. I did it! The Calamitous Sound Wave. 4th stage. Turning back to the Martial King, because Renhat had successfully used the 4th stage of the technique, he began to speak. It seems the time has come for you to step out into the world. You have done very well, Renhat, my disciple. Now you can live freely as you wish. I don't care if you become good or evil. Live the life you want. That is the reward for your years of training. 60 years ago, the 3rd generation martial king, Rasto, told me, remember 3 things. First, it's fine to accumulate wealth, but do not engage in dishonest deeds. Jorat, at that time, heard this and asked with some confusion, Huh? I thought you said it was okay to become evil? I'm saying, if you really want to, at least be a villain with some dignity, at least have your own style. What a strange ideal, Jorat said, turning to the 3rd generation martial king. He ignored Jorat's words and continued his instructions. Second, whenever possible, stand on the side of those who are treated unjustly. Isn't it better to be praised and respected? Those who are treated unjustly, not the weak, Jorat asked, confused. And in response to this question, the 3rd generation martial king began to enlighten his disciple. Being weak does not necessarily mean being treated unjustly. Besides, there are many people in this world weaker than you. How do you intend to distinguish between them? Then he raised 3 fingers and said, and third, the most important thing, no matter what it takes, never let the martial arts of the Cheonbiom sect be lost. You must find a disciple and pass on this great martial art. Understand? Yes, master, I will take it to heart, Renhat said hastily. Hearing his disciple's words, Martial King Jorat smiled and tossed a bag to Renhat, saying, finding a talented child is not an easy task that can be done in a moment. Remember this for the rest of your life, but when the opportunity comes, do not miss it. Take this. Inside are clothes and travel expenses. Across from him, Rifen hurriedly caught the bag of belongings and money pouch that Jorat tossed him, then grimaced and said, only 30 silver coins? I thought people in the Vasily kingdom were pretty well off. Master, you even have a mansion, right? You should have given me more than this. And in response to his disciple's question, Jorat grinned widely and said, our martial school has a rule about paying a fee for those who leave the mountain early. The fee was just increased due to inflation. It used to be only 25 silver coins. Even so, this is still half a year's living expenses for a commoner. As he said this, he also pulled out a map, handed it to Ren, and said, I've also prepared a gift for you at the carriage row. You can find the place with this map. Feel free to visit if you're ever nearby. And after that, Ren finished packing his gear and headed down the mountain. At this moment, he felt a little reluctant to leave. Is it really okay for me to leave the mountain? Am I really free to leave this place? Rifen thought as he turned to look back at the mountain where he had trained for so long. And while he was still lost in nostalgic thoughts, a massive pillar of light suddenly shot up from the top of the mountain, making his eyes go wide. Holy cow! Renhat cried out in terror upon witnessing this scene. And this was the farewell gift from his master, Jorat. Go! My disciple, do not regret this parting. Move forward and don't look back. You are the inheritor of the greatest doctrine in this world. And without his master needing to say a word, Ren was already scared out of his wits after seeing that. Now, he wouldn't dare go back even if you paid him in gold. The scene shifts to a large inn in some town. At this moment, a man was speaking worriedly to an old man next to him. It's too dangerous, village chief. Hearing this, the old man said, I have to say what needs to be said, even to a noble. Just then, a knight across from them noticed their demeanor and turned to ask, What's the matter, village chief? Hearing this, the village chief stepped forward to speak. I request that you pay for all the provisions that you and your knights have consumed during this time. And as soon as he heard about money, the knight's face soured more than ever. These damn peasants, he thought to himself. then tossed the old man 1 gold coin, saying, "Here, this should be more than enough." The village chief hurriedly caught the gold coin and fell silent. Seeing his silence, the knight confidently thought, "This must be the first time these wretches have seen a gold coin." But his confidence didn't even last 3 seconds before the village chief proved him wrong by speaking up. "Sir, this is nowhere near enough." Before he could even finish, the knight spun around with a furious expression and roared, "What? You insolent fool! Do you think I know nothing of market prices just because I'm a noble? How dare you mock a knight?" After saying that, he casually punched the old village chief right in the face. This, of course, enraged the other villagers, but they could only dare to curse them under their breath. They're bandits, not knights. They took over our homes, ate all our food, and think they can pay for it all with just 1 gold coin? He didn't even factor in the costs of transportation and labor. And while they were cursing the knights and their entire family line, a voice rang out from behind him. "What is the matter, Sir Edward?" The knight Edward heard this and quickly turned to say, "Oh, it's nothing, Prince Stefan." At that moment, the so-called prince looked over at the villagers and said with a voice full of contempt, "Such despicable creatures. This is why you shouldn't show them any mercy, because they've forgotten their place." Returning to Renhat's past memories, his older self was happily embracing his lover and asked, "Why do you like caressing me so much?" "Simply because I like to." Siri said, "What could you possibly like about this withered old body?" And in response to his question, the elf girl said, "You look so firm and sharp, like a finely honed blade. At least, that's how you were in the past, but now it's different." In the present, Ren was looking at himself in the mirror and lamenting his massive body. "I used to look like that, but now, don't I just look like a brutish monster? The only thing that makes me happy is that I'm much taller now." Ceres must be about 70 years old, which is around 17 in human years. This place is Krom, a city in the southern part of the Vasily kingdom, and Ceres will be sold next year at the slave auction house in Chetan. Thinking about this, Ryfan wondered what he should do. Should I just crash the auction and snatch her away? No. If I do something that reckless, it'll be tough to gather the materials I need to restore my power. It's faster to just solve it with money. The price of an elf slave is terrifyingly high, and I'm flat broke, but it's fine. I have my martial arts skills and memories from my past life. As I recall, I think I heard in my past life that there's an ancient ruin in the same direction as Chetan. The scene shifts to Prince Stefan. At that moment, he turned to a certain mage and asked, "Well, haven't you located those ancient ruins yet?" Hearing this, Tot hurriedly replied, "Please just wait a little longer, Your Highness." After speaking, he began to focus his mind to search. As for his identity, Tot is a mage from Delpia's magic tower. His specialization is archaeology, and he is currently 35 years old. And not long after, it seemed Tot had told Stefan the location of the ruins, so he looked out the window and said, "Is that the place?" "Yes, Your Highness. That is where the famous swordsman Circlin von Leotis Ante is buried." As they spoke, both of them started looking towards the snowy mountain in the distance. Back to Ryfan. "I've been away from Krom for 3 days now. I'm heading north, crossing the Hatan Mountains via the main road. My stamina is incredible, and I don't even feel the cold. What an amazing body. I once heard that the Fist King never wore a shirt when he went out, even in winter, but I don't want to do that." Memory restoration. A secret art that allows me to review my memories from any time. I used it to recall what I know about the ancient ruins in the Hatan Mountains. In the past, before I regressed, I met a mage named Tot at Delpia's magic tower. He said he had discovered what was hidden within the ruins. That's right, I remember it clearly. I also went there in my past life and scooped up a ton of treasure that Tot's group missed back then. I sold it all for 2,000 gold coins. So sweet. Thinking of this, Ryfan began to pick up his pace, and by that evening, he had set foot in a village. Catho Village. "I remember this place pretty well, huh?" Ryfan mumbled. Meanwhile, inside a certain house in the village, an important meeting was taking place. Someone spoke up. "What are we going to do now? We're not allowed to go near the Valley of Death." In response to this, a man in a blue shirt immediately objected. But they demanded a guide. "You know what will happen if we dare to refuse their request." Hearing this, the young man with black hair gritted his teeth and said, "Even if the chief is away, he'll still be furious." At this point, he couldn't hold back his frustration and yelled, "This is insane! Those damn noble pigs!" Faced with his outburst, the man in blue next to him quickly advised, "Hey, calm down. What if they hear you?" And while everyone was still wondering who should take on this dangerous mission, a man volunteered. I'll go. I know the mountain best. I'm the most suitable person for this job." Hearing this, everyone exclaimed in surprise, "Test you?" At that moment, Test's wife and daughter began to hug him and cry their eyes out. Seeing this, Test could only grit his teeth and endure it. "I don't want to go at all either, but I have no choice. And in contrast to this family's tragic atmosphere, the remaining men began to look at him with excited eyes and said, "That's right, Test. You can do it. A man should keep his word." The way these guys were looking at him like he was already dead started to make Test reconsider. "Now I really don't want to go." And it seems Lady Luck had smiled upon him, because right at that moment, above the window, near Test, a face suddenly appeared, pressed against the glass and said, "I can go in your place." And of course, this suddenly appearing face scared Test to death. He immediately drew his bow, aimed it at Ryfin, and said fearfully, "Who are you?" Seeing how scared he was, Ryfin quickly waved his hands and said, "I was just passing by and happened to overhear your conversation." Happened to? Who would? Did he just happen to walk by someone's house and stop to eavesdrop? Everyone wondered the same thing, but since Ren had already volunteered to go to the site, that dangerous place, they invited him into the room and asked, "Do you know the terrain there?" "Fairly well," Ren said. "It's so dangerous, yet you still want to go?" "I've been through there a few times, so it'll be fine," Ren said confidently. But perhaps because the villagers didn't want him to die young, they tried to advise him. "I don't think you know much about it. No one has ever gone in there and come back alive. Do you really still want to go?" "I told you, I've been in there a few times," Ren said. At the same time, he thought to himself, "You all should be grateful that I just saved your lives." Additional information about the Valley of Death. The Valley of Death. It's a dungeon. More specifically, it's a remnant from the Silver Age, a place that was long forgotten until about 50 years ago. There was a great swordsman named Got. He was still very young. At only 45 years old, he had already awakened the light sword. He had participated in every expedition on the continent, and his heroic tales spread throughout the kingdom of Vasily. But fame makes a man arrogant. Afterward, Clot entered the valley with only one companion and perished there. But the peculiar thing is that the Antian demon sword he carried also vanished within the ruins. The Antian demon sword is a family heirloom of the Antian clan, passed down through many generations. For the past 50 years, they have been desperately trying to retrieve that sword. And the next morning, Ren was leading Prince Stefan's party to the ruins. At that moment, he observed the prince and thought, could he be Got's grandson? And while he was lost in thought, the prince and the elf girl beside him began to get affectionate with each other. "Your Highness, you move with such graceful might, even without a horse. Master, you truly are a top-tier knight." Hearing this, Stepan replied cheerfully, "Your compliments are so sweet, Lenia. I'm not as great as you say." And this cheesy display almost made Ren, who was behind them, throw up his food. An elf slave. Look at her smiling so brightly, he thought with annoyance. Next, he turned to look at a person with long red hair, sizing them up. There's only one priest in the party? Is his name Shinlan? He looks so young. Does he even know how to use spells? Moreover, this person is a guy? Ren started to break out in a cold sweat at his own thoughts. Then, he glanced over at the mage, Tot. I should try to strike up a conversation with Tot. It's been a long time since I've seen him, but those two were too engrossed in their conversation. He had been talking non-stop since they departed, and this atmosphere just feels off. Something isn't right here. And just as he had that thought, a very dangerous idea suddenly crossed Ren's mind, causing his face to drain of color. Wait a minute, could he be? And to preserve the innocent image of an acquaintance, Ren began to deceive himself. No way, Tot is a kind person. It can't be. How could he possibly be? And while Ren was still sweating over his own thoughts, Edward spoke up from behind him. A wise choice. Traveler Ren heard his voice and turned to ask, "You mean choosing me as the guide was a good choice?" "Not exactly. I had to go in place of the villagers anyway." Edward heard this and admitted, "That's right. Because the villagers were too scared. No one else dared to do it." "Of course they'd be scared," Ren said calmly. But his words confused the long-haired man. "What is there to be afraid of when we are accompanied by the brave knights of the kingdom?" After saying this, he even put on an incredibly smug expression, causing Ren to grit his teeth in anger. These damn knights. Every single one of them is a selfish coward. Those guys are an embarrassment to work with. What good are they anyway? And while Ren was still silently cursing them, a sudden shriek echoed from above them. Then, from the distant treetops, some dark figures shot up into the air. At first glance, they looked like a bundle of rags rolled together. And right after, this bundle of rags unfurled to reveal a monstrous bird inside. It seems that was their way of camouflaging themselves in the trees, waiting for their prey to get closer. And as soon as the prey was in their sights, they all launched their attack at once, just like now. At that moment, someone in the group also screamed, "It's a monster ambush. Everyone, get into formation quickly." And as soon as those words were spoken, the flock of monster birds up ahead closed in on them. Seeing this, Prince Stefan also roared, "How dare you disgusting monsters attack me? The one blessed by the prophet. Knights of Entienne, Hear my command and attack. Following his words, everyone immediately entered a combat stance. At the same time, Tot, who was at the back, used his fireball skill to create countless fireballs and launch them straight at the flock of monster birds. And while he was buying time, Shinlan also used his blessing skill to support the knights. "O venerable Phelan, please grant them courage and resilience." And right after he said this, a pink glow began to envelop the bodies of these heavily armored knights. Turning back to Renat, he was calmly observing the group fighting and thought to himself, "Not bad, especially that kid Stepan. He's stronger than I thought. It seems that blessing has a pretty decent effect." Of course, that's from the perspective of a 10-circle mage from my past life. But if I look at it with the eyes of a martial artist, they look pretty pathetic. If it were me, just a few of my punches would have taken them all down. Master Jarrett wasn't proud of my strength for nothing. But anyway, it seems like no one is paying attention to me, huh? As he thought this, Ren began to glance towards Oros's group, who were carrying the luggage at the back. At that moment, they were also being targeted by one of the monster birds, and the ferocious appearance of the monster made these burly guys so scared they froze in place, unable to move. Then, just as they thought they were done for, a hand appeared and punched this monster bird straight in the face, causing it to explode into pieces instantly. And of course, the owner of this punch was Renat. And after Renat turned this monster bird into minced meat, he once again had time for his mind to wander. If Tot's expedition story is true, then that guide must have died here. The leader of this expedition is the hero Stepan of the Antien family. He's not exactly a bad person, but he doesn't care about anyone around him at all. He's only focused on showing off and upholding his noble ego. But wait a minute, that actually makes him a bad person. This is why that guide died. Shinlan is a little better, Renat thought as he started glancing over at Shinlan. Just then, Shinlan kindly advised Renat, "It's dangerous here. You should hurry and hide behind a tree or something." And just as he said this, a monster bird in the sky flapped its wings, launching countless feathers towards Renat. But seeing this, Renat didn't even bother to dodge. Getting hit by these feathers won't even hurt a bit, Renat thought to himself. And this thought only lasted for 3 seconds, because right after, a feather shot straight towards his eye, almost blinding him. "My eye!" Renat screamed as he was hit by this dirty trick, and as a result of daring to hurt his eye, this monster bird was obliterated with a single punch. "Didn't I cry all my tears out during training, so why are they flowing again now?" Renat mumbled, a little embarrassed, under the fearful gazes of Oros's group behind him. And it seemed the battle was over. Just then, Stefan turned to Edward and said, "Report the number of injured immediately. Are the mages and priests safe?" "They are safe, sir," Edward replied hastily. Meanwhile, Ren, who was nearby, heard these two guys only worrying about the mages and priests without asking about them at all, so he grumbled, "Hey, don't you care if we live or die?" And it was true. He really didn't care. Or rather, he didn't even notice Ren's words and started to turn and speak to his soldiers. "The knights of Entienne are mighty. You may all rest and enjoy the pleasure of victory." Hearing this, the soldiers began to cheer in celebration. Turning back to Renat, while this group was still immersed in the joy of their victory, he turned to strike up a conversation with Tot. "Thank you, mage. I was able to survive thanks to you." "Ah, it was nothing," Tot said. After that, Ren casually asked about the matter he needed to know. "I heard you're from the Delpia Magic Tower. I have a friend there. His name is Renat. Do you know him?" And at this question, Tot was a bit startled and said, "Ah, you mean Renat? That kid has a big friend like you? He's a pretty cute and kind-hearted kid." That's what this guy Tot was saying. Began to laugh with great interest. This made Ren a little worried about the Ren at the Magic Tower, and he turned back to Tot. After he finished laughing, he calmed down and asked, "So, why do you ask?" "Oh, I just wanted to know if he's doing well. And has anything major happened to him recently?" "Ah, he's been diligently studying magic," Tot said. Hearing this, Ren asked again, "Has anything strange happened over the past few years?" "Strange? I don't think so," Tot said calmly. But then, he immediately recalled the image of Ren at the Magic Tower, and a completely perverted expression appeared on his face as he said, "The bridge of his nose is as high as ever, his eyes are like jewels, and his skin is so smooth." And as Tot spoke these words, Ren realized he was the same type as his master. This guy was just like Master Jerus, only interested in his physique, but in a different way. Good grief, what should I do? Should I just beat him to a pulp? At that thought, Ren's face scrunched up in disgust. But he still had to force himself to stay calm so he wouldn't kill the guy, and asked, "Besides all that, has his personality changed at all?" "I'm not so sure. I'm not very interested in that kid's thoughts or actions," Tot said, drooling. And while this guy was lost in his dark thoughts, Shinlan approached from a distance and asked Renat, "Are you injured anywhere?" "I'm fine. Please check on the Oros over there instead." Ren said as he turned to look at the group of Oros. Following Ren's words, Shinlan quickly went over to the big guys and began to heal them. But it seemed that having a kind human suddenly come to heal them made these orcs a bit scared, so they hurriedly said, "It's okay, High Priest, we're not in pain. This is really nothing, it doesn't hurt at all." But despite their words, Shinlan calmly said, "Stay still," he said while continuing to maintain his healing magic. However, Shinlan's actions made some of the remaining soldiers wonder and ask, "Priest, those guys just need to lick their wounds and they'll heal. Why are you wasting your energy healing them?" Back to Renat. After seeing Shinlan's actions, he had many thoughts. Shinlan was kind and even healed them, but he treated them like cats and dogs, not people. The biggest problem is that the core value of humans is arrogance. Other races are always treated like animals. The path for races to fight for their rights is still long and arduous. And while he was still pondering this issue, that guy Stepan from behind started to arrogantly order, "Hey, lead the way, now, show us where to go." This guy's superior attitude was starting to really piss Ren off. However, for the sake of the greater goal, he had to endure it and turn to speak to him in a robotic voice. "After going straight, turn right. There's a stream up ahead, so please slow down." "What's with that weird voice?" Stepan asked, puzzled. "It's nothing, sir," Ren replied calmly. Time passed quickly, and after a few hours of traveling and constantly running into monsters, the soldiers in Stepan's group were all battered and bruised. A death viper and a dire wolf, and then over 20 goblins. How can this tiny mountain have so many monsters? A few complaining voices from the soldiers began to rise up. But after hearing these words, Ren started to laugh inwardly. Why? It's because I didn't choose the established path and just plowed straight ahead. That's why we're running into so many monsters. Thinking this, a grin spread across his face as he said to Stepan up ahead, "Do you need to rest, sir?" On the surface, his words seemed to show concern, but they were like a knife striking directly at the pride of these arrogant nobles. If he hadn't said anything, the soldiers might have been able to rest a bit. But the moment he spoke, Stepan's cheap sense of superiority flared up, and he yelled at the soldiers, "Everyone, get up!" Seeing him start to scream like that, Ren almost died laughing. Right now, Ren was reading him like an open book. The knight was too arrogant, the priest was too rigid, and the mage was narrow-minded and nasty. The nature of a mage from my past life is ingrained in my very bones. It's true, I'm the one who showed you the way. The fastest way was to go straight there, so I wasn't lying. I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable. After that, the group began to move once again. At this point, even someone like Stepan had to exclaim, "So this is the place where Sir Cross lost his life. I never expected there to be so many monsters on this small mountain." And as he said these words, they had already arrived at their destination, and the sight before him left him a little stunned. From Stepan's perspective, the forest in front of them was gone. In its place was an ancient ruin, lying beneath a massive fissure in the earth. "Oh, is this it?" Stepan exclaimed happily upon seeing the ruin. And Edward confirmed with a smile, "This is definitely it, Sir Stepan. That is the great Panton ruin." From above, the ruin resembled the warhead of an artillery shell. Getting back to the story, after spotting the ruin, the entire group quickly approached it. And then, standing before the entrance to the ruin, Ren said, "This is the entrance. I believe we can head inside now." "Your Highness." Hearing this, Stepan immediately turned to his men and said, "All right, everyone, prepare to enter," turning back to Ren. Because his only mission was to guide them, his job was technically finished. So, he spoke up. "Well then, I'll wait here since my guiding duties are over." Hearing Ren, Stepan finally seemed to recall his presence and said, Very well. Your work here is done. You can return now." "But I have no way of getting back by myself," Ren quickly replied. Hearing this, Stepan remembered that guides like him were usually too weak to make it back alone, so he declared, "You worked hard guiding us here, so we will protect you on the way back." This condescending, charity-like remark began to infuriate Ren. "So you didn't plan on it from the beginning, huh?" As he thought this, Ren started cracking his knuckles. If it weren't for his main objective, he would have already beaten this guy senseless. Turning back to Stepan, before entering the ruin, he spouted some nonsense to rally his soldiers. "A great being slumbers within. Let us honor his will. Let us venture inside and find the demon sword. Antien, together. Forward, valiant knights of Antien." After his speech, the knights got all fired up and charged headfirst into the ruin like madmen. Meanwhile, Ren stood to the side and said with a bright smile, "Good luck." He waited until the entire group had entered the ruin, then smiled and said, "Excellent, now it's my turn to make a move. Right now, this ancient Panton ruin is crawling with monsters and ghosts. But back in the Silver Age, it was a logistics base used as a standard military facility. Although it was nothing special then, nowadays, Silver Age technology is considered a rare miracle, making it quite valuable. Then, Ren himself stepped inside the ruin. As he walked through and witnessed the familiar sights, many memories flooded back, and he murmured, "It's really been a long time. I explored this place with Ceres before. We were so happy back then. Refin, are the wind spirits whispering that there's a secret passage this way?" "Great job, Ciri. You're my goddess," Ren said with a smile. Then, the elf girl used some sort of magic to open the secret passage. And after entering the secret passage, the first thing they did wasn't explore, but get intimate with each other. "I'm so embarrassed." "Embarrassed? I'll reward you with a kiss." The memories of his reckless youth began to flood back, causing Ren's face to flush as he spoke. What were Sirius and I even doing in such a dangerous place? I was so bold back then. It took him a moment to shake those improper thoughts out of his head and focus on the wall before him. The password was based on the left side of the Libra constellation combined with the inverted seals of water and earth, right? I basically already know the answer. I just don't have enough mana, so activating it won't be that easy. I think. Another problem is that this body's mind isn't very sharp, Renat thought as he began focusing the mana inside his body to unlock the door. And not long after, the wall in front of him split apart, revealing a secret passage behind it. Seeing this, Renat said happily, "Ah, it worked. For now, I'll just take off my coat. I spent 10 silver coins on these clothes, so I can't just throw them away." After saying that, he carefully took off his coat and folded it neatly to one side. Then, he stretched and cracked his joints to warm up his body a bit before saying, "Well then, should I test out this body's abilities now?" And just as he finished saying this, a blood-curdling scream suddenly echoed from ahead of him. Then, a few more screams rang out right after. This made our big guy extremely curious. How strange. They entered from that direction. Why are there screams coming from this side? At this point, Renat remembered something and muttered, "Wait, now that I think about it, this secret passage is the back entrance to the 3rd floor of the basement. If it opens, it would be considered a form of trespassing." And as soon as he said this, a realization seemed to dawn on Renat. Wait a minute, trespassing. I remember now. After all, this is a military building. That magic system will activate all sorts of defensive measures to repel intruders. Before, only Ceres and I ever came here, so we didn't have to worry about the other areas. But now that Stepan's group is in the basement, they must have triggered a trap and fallen to the 2nd level of the dungeon. Now it looks like they're really done for, Renat thought, his face twisting into a grimace. Thanks to the efforts of our troublemaking big guy, the prince and his lackeys seem to have been sent to their doom. Switching scenes to Stepan's group, they're still alive but are currently in the middle of some kind of battle. At that moment, a certain knight was struck by a gigantic weapon. Although he managed to raise his sword in time to block the blow, his small sword instantly shattered in two upon impact with the massive weapon. And then, the knight was sent flying. Seeing this, Stepan immediately shouted in alarm, "Sir Thomas!" After shouting, he looked ahead and muttered, "What in the world is that?" Following his gaze, a giant scythe appeared in the dark hallway ahead. Then, a giant head with a flickering flame in its eye socket emerged. After seeing this creature, Stepan's face went pale as he thought, "We can't defeat that thing. How can a human possibly win against a demon like that?" At this point, the demon's entire body had emerged. It had a colossal form, like a demon from hell, and was also carrying a weapon. Not far away, the figures of a few other demons were turning towards Zelan. Right now, she was muttering a spell to heal someone. "Oh, goddess Philanens, please let your healing light envelop this soul." As her words rang out, the soldier's body was enveloped in a stream of light, and his wound slowly healed. For context, Philan is the goddess of beauty, mercy, and love. And thanks to Zelan's healing ability, the soldiers were full of vigor again in no time. After seeing they had recovered, the soldiers quickly turned to thank Zelan. "Thank you, priestess." Seeing them, Zelan simply smiled and thought, "It's the least I can do. I need them to be safe for me to survive. I almost died when the floor suddenly collapsed." Thinking of this, she turned to Tot and said, "Thank you, Sir Mage. Thanks to your protection magic, we all survived." Hearing this, Tot, who was up ahead, didn't look happy at all. In fact, he seemed a bit worried as he said, "We may have avoided one accident, but whether we can survive what's to come is still uncertain." After speaking, he looked worriedly toward the passage ahead. And right after that, a few screams suddenly rang out, followed by the bodies of several soldiers being flung out of the narrow passage. "It's a monster!" someone screamed, as they saw the massive demon emerge from the hallway, continuously knocking away the soldiers in front of it. And right behind this massive demon were a few other demons, along with countless zombies escorting them on both sides. Upon seeing this scene, the soldiers began to scatter like headless chickens. "Oh my God, run!" they screamed. Sion, seeing the dire situation from the back, immediately used his blessing ability to support them. "Oh, Goddess Philan, please strike down that hideous creature with your mace of light." And right after his words, a giant mace was summoned above everyone's heads, and although it was called a mace of light, for some reason, its head was a skull. Turning back to Sion, after seeing the giant mace appear, he began to use his blessing skill. "Oh, goddess Philanons, please grant them unwavering courage." But it seemed the unwavering courage the goddess bestowed upon them was not enough, so this group, even after receiving the blessing, still ran for their lives. Sion saw this, gritted his teeth, and cursed inwardly. Have these knights of Anti lost all their nerve? What a waste of my energy. Thinking this, he began to cast his blessing once more. "Oh, goddess Philanons, please grant them courage and fortitude." With 2 consecutive layers of blessings, it finally seemed like the knights had regained their fighting spirit, roaring like madmen. Their eyes had rolled back into their heads. This sight also made Tot, who was watching from behind, feel worried. How much divine power did this guy use to make them go berserk like this? It's like he gave the knights a strength-enhancing potion. Turning back to the knights, after receiving the blessing, a man named Edward took the lead and roared, "Knights of Anti, show those wicked creatures our courage." After saying that, he and the others began to charge forward. What followed was a close-quarters battle between the knights and the monsters, and while the knights were holding back the monsters at the front, Tot began to use magic from the rear to support them. "Mother Earth, reach out your hand and take back what is yours." Steel. As he completed the spell, the great sword in the giant demon's hand was suddenly pulled straight towards him. The sudden loss of its weapon startled the demon, and Elenia seized this opportunity to immediately charge in and attack. With just a simple leap, she soared into the air above its head, then plunged her sword straight down, making it shriek in pain. But right after that, she was struck by a direct punch from it. The monster's enormous fist sent her flying far away, crying out in pain. And it seemed this blow had temporarily taken her out of the fight. "Was I of any help, Prince?" She coughed a few times and asked Stefan, who was nearby. Seeing this, Stefan replied, "You did well, Lencia." With that, he began to charge forward, unleashing countless slashes upon the giant's body. The lesser zombies nearby were also caught in the storm of blades and were sliced into countless pieces, their limbs flying everywhere. Seeing this, Edward didn't forget to kiss up, saying, "That's Prince Stefan for you. What a courageous knight." But despite the flattery, Stefan didn't feel happy at all. His face remained dark as he said, "These filthy monsters." And after cursing the monsters a few times, he turned and shouted at the others, "Everyone, stay sharp. This is the place where even the Clot Knight order fell." And I don't know if he jinxed it or what, but right after he said that, something strange happened, as a massive flame suddenly appeared above them and shot straight down. Its power was so immense that it caused the ground to explode instantly, and the soldiers at the center of the blast took the full force of it. The master of this attack was a giant demon whose entire body was engulfed in flames. Just a single glance was enough to tell it was on a completely different level than the previous monsters. And after seeing that it could make the knights drop like flies just by spitting a few fireballs, it let out a few roars to assert its dominance. Then, it swung its giant arm, swatting away the knights who were approaching. Sion, seeing this, hurriedly tried to rally everyone's spirits. "Don't falter. Didn't you all make up your minds? And you dare call yourselves the brave knights of Anti?" But his words of encouragement weren't very effective, because up ahead, the fire monster was still going berserk and attacking everyone. Basically, every time it launched an attack, a few guys would get wiped out. As for the knights, they could only run like headless chickens at the sight of its power, without it even having to attack them directly. Just the aftershock and heat waves from its blows were enough to make this guy Edward turn away and dodge. "This is insane. There's no way I can fight this thing." Stepan gritted his teeth in thought, then let out a shout and started charging forward. "I can't just accept defeat like this. I am the one who upholds the honor of the name Anti, the one bestowed with the title of Soul Severer." With this thought, he used some knight's head as a springboard to leap into the air. Then, he clenched his jaw and unleashed a powerful sword thrust. This was his ultimate move, but unfortunately, it missed. And the consequence of missing was getting his face rearranged by the demon's fist. Immediately after taking a punch from the demon, he went flying like a ragged sackcloth amidst the astonished gazes of everyone around. And after hitting the ground and rolling for several dozen turns, he finally came to a stop. But by now, the poor guy's eyes had rolled back. He was probably unconscious. This is what happens when weaklings try to show off. In the end, it was the priest, Shinlan, who began chanting a spell to deal with this massive monster. "Oh, goddess Philanons, please annihilate these evil creatures with your light." And as soon as the incantation ended, the giant skull-topped staff above his head came crashing down on the fire monster's head. That attack was pretty powerful. It made the demon's mouth bleed profusely, and it looked like it had broken a few teeth, but that was all it did. The monster then turned to look at Shin-lan with a menacing gaze. Seeing this, Shin-lan's face turned pale. And right after that, the hulking monster charged straight at him like a tank. Meanwhile, all Shin-lan could do was shut his eyes tightly at the sight. And just at the moment he thought he was about to be logged out, the monster's massive body was suddenly sent flying backward by something. The loud sound of the impact made Shin-lan quickly open his eyes and look forward, and in his line of sight, there was now a heroic figure who had just sent the monster flying with a punch. And of course, this person was Reifenhart. It was a good thing he arrived in time, or else the priest would have been toast. Back to Reifenhart, after sending the monster flying, he was a bit surprised himself, because the monster had kicked the bucket after just one punch from him. The blazing flames on its body had now been completely extinguished. Wait, that's all it took to kill it? No wonder I almost died after taking a punch from Teslan in my past life. Reifenhart thought to himself, then turned to look at the soldiers lying scattered on the ground and muttered, "First, I need to move these injured people to a safe place." And he would create that safe place himself by punching away all the zombies in front of him. Meanwhile, seeing how powerful he was, Shin-lan and Tot, who were behind him, thought to themselves, "Whoa, who on earth is this guy?" From their perspective, Reifenhart was sending all the zombies flying with just one hand, all while safely protecting Oros in his arms. And after a long while, Stepan slowly regained consciousness. Seeing this, Edward immediately asked, "You're awake, sir?" In response to his question, Stepan just stared intently at the ravaged bodies of the zombies around them and asked, "What just happened?" Hearing this, Edward slowly began to explain everything he knew. And of course, after hearing the explanation, Stepan's jaw dropped in astonishment. What? Is he really a martial artist? As he spoke, he pointed towards Reifenhart with an incredulous look. But right after, he composed himself to maintain his image, slowly approached Reifenhart, and said, "I didn't realize you were of such noble birth. What is your name?" Hearing this, Reifenhart crossed his arms and said, "Reifen. My name is Reifen." The reason he used this alias is because Tot had met Reinhardt at the Magic Tower, so if he used his real name, it would create an overlap. And of course, this fake name also made Edward wondered from behind. "Reifen? That's the first time I've ever heard that name. If he's so strong, why haven't I heard of him before?" he asked Stepan. After hearing Reifen's name, Stepan continued to question him. "What family do you belong to?" "A family? I don't have one," Reifen said calmly. And as soon as he learned of Reifen's origins, his attitude changed instantly. "What? He's just a commoner? I thought he was the descendant of a noble family, wandering around to train. Who would have thought he just has an ordinary background? This is so awkward," Stepan mumbled. And then, right after that, he regained his haughty attitude, clapped Reifen on the shoulder and said, "It seems you've handled the rest. Well done. You really did contribute a little something." Turning to Reifen, this superior attitude naturally made him feel annoyed. So Reifen swatted his hand away and said, "What the hell are you thinking? Why don't you take a look at the situation? You honestly didn't do a single useful thing." Hearing this, Stepan's face soured and he said, "What? How dare you? You should respect someone from a noble family." And just as he barked out that sentence, Edward quickly interjected from behind, "Calm down, sir. How could a commoner possibly understand noble etiquette?" And for some reason, those words worked like a charm on Stepan. After hearing them, he immediately calmed down and said, "You're right. It's not like he was raised properly. So, can you tell me your master's name?" "I'm just self-taught," Reifen said evasively. The reason Reifen was bluffing like that was because his master, Gerard, was too famous for him to mention casually. Besides, Reifen didn't want him to know his whereabouts. And of course, the idea of becoming this strong through self-training alone made Stepan a little suspicious. And he said, "But this strength, did you really figure it all out by yourself?" Hearing this, Reifen cleaned his ear out of boredom and said, "You should be worrying about your injured comrades instead of wasting time interrogating me. They need treatment." As he spoke, he started pointing to the soldiers lying scattered everywhere. And Reifen's way of speaking made Edward, who was standing opposite him, think for a moment. The way he talks feels so natural, but he doesn't seem to realize how arrogant it is. Like how people of high status speak to those beneath them. If we put his age aside, with that nonchalant attitude, he could be royalty from another nation. Thinking this, he became more confident in his speculation. That must be it. Perhaps I know why he's so arrogant. That's the way an elder speaks to a junior. What a strange young man. Turning to Sinan, he now approached Reifen and asked, "Excuse me, is your name Reifen? How tall are you?" Hearing this, Reifen turned to look at the tiny guy and said, Probably about 6'3". "What about your weight?" Sinan asked, his eyes sparkling. "I don't know. I haven't weighed myself," Reifen said awkwardly. And at Reifen's answer, Sinan continued to stare at him with an admiring gaze and asked, "How do you usually train to get a body like this?" "I just fight, eat, and lift a lot of weights. I know." I heard that martial arts masters don't easily reveal their training methods, Sinan said cheerfully, but this attitude of his left Refin a bit confused. Why is he suddenly so friendly? The tiny guy's full name is Sinan Fis. He was an orphan from a young age and grew up in an orphanage. As a child, he was often bullied for being weak and for his appearance. This went on for some time, so he gradually became obsessed with the things he didn't have. A powerful physique, a deep and loud voice. At one point, he even wanted to become a gorilla, a species that proves itself with its body. But reality was far from his imagination. He didn't get any taller despite going through puberty, and his hair just grew remarkably fast. Despite having a weak body, he still tried bodybuilding, hoping to overcome his obsession. But the only result was that his mana increased from using healing magic on his training injuries. And because of that, he started to admire muscular people. Just like now, he was looking at Refin with eyes full of longing and said, "You, how wonderful." That look sent shivers down Ryfen H's spine as he thought in horror, what is with that expression? At that moment, Ryfen H wanted nothing more than to get away from Shinlan. So he said, "I'm going to look for an exit." But unfortunately for Ryfen H, Shinlan was determined to stick to him like glue. "I'll go with you," Shinlan said enthusiastically. "But what if someone gets hurt while you're gone?" Ryfen H reminded her. Just then, from the side, Stefan, who had overheard their conversation, chimed in. "In that case, I'll go with you." He then turned to the woman beside him. "Lencia, you stay here and help the others." "Yes, master," Lencia replied. Stefan then approached Ryfen H and asked, "Is that all right with you?" "Do as you please," Ryfen H answered calmly. And just like that, the two began to move through the dungeon in search of an exit. As they walked, Stefan was filled with suspicion as he looked at Ryfen H. "Even if it was just a coincidence, I refuse to admit that I was helped by some country bumpkin. He should be honored to have helped a knight. The way he does things as he pleases is ironclad proof of his disrespect for the knightly order, the arrogant bastard. Let's see if you can keep that composure when a monster shows up. I'll show you my skills and teach you to know your place," he thought, beginning to imagine himself effortlessly defeating monsters, while Ryfen H knelt beside him, thanking him for saving his life. This fantasy made him unable to hold back a sinister smirk. "I hope a monster shows up soon." And his train of thought was cut short right there. The reason being that Ryfen H had just knocked him out cold with a single chop. "It's about time. Take a little nap," Ryfen H muttered. After that, Ryfen H glanced behind him, where a mob of zombies was slowly closing in on them. It seemed the zombies realized they had been spotted, as two of them immediately picked up speed and charged straight at him. For these pathetic monsters, Ryfen H only needed 2 punches to send them packing. Obstacles cleared, now let's go find some treasure, Ryfen H said cheerfully as he started moving forward. It wasn't long before he arrived at what appeared to be a storage room. Excellent. 50 silver coins from the Silver Age? It has to be around here somewhere, right? Ryfen H muttered as he began searching the shelves. Moments later, he found a backpack and exclaimed with joy, "Found it! A spatial bag." A spatial bag is a magical item capable of holding objects up to 10 times its own size, and it also reduces their weight by a factor of 10. And the spatial bag wasn't the only valuable item in this storage room. There was also a Skyfire forge, a returning spirit dagger, magic crystals, and so on. "Heh, what a pile of valuables," Ryfen H said with a grin. After snatching up all the rare items, he returned to where he had left Stefan. By now, the knight was slowly coming to, rubbing his head and asking, "What happened?" Hearing this, Ryfen H, who was right beside him, began his award-winning performance. "You're awake? They attacked you from behind. You went down almost immediately," Ryfen H said, gesturing to the zombie corpse on the ground as proof for Stefan. Hearing this, Stefan thought to himself, "Damn it, why is my luck so bad today?" With that thought, he voiced his gratitude. "Thank you for protecting me. Don't mention it," Ryfen H said with a smile, all the while thinking, "Looks like I'll have to knock him out again." And so it went. While Ryfen H looted everything in the ruins, Stefan was knocked unconscious at least 3 more times. "I'm not hitting him too hard, am I? Oh well, even if I mess up, he'll be fine," Ryfen H thought to himself. After getting knocked out so many times, Stefan began to realize something was off. But no matter how hard he thought about it, he couldn't put his finger on it. "This is strange. I was on high alert, but I didn't sense a thing. Is there something wrong with my body? Maybe I need to take some tonics when I get home," he thought, glancing back at Ryfen H. Meanwhile, Ryfen H was just staring intently at the spatial bag on his hip, thinking happily, "I've got the bag. I can probably come back for the rest of the loot later." With that in mind, he spoke up. "Looks like we've hit the end of the path. Let's head back." "I suppose so," Stefan replied, mumbled. And after those two returned, the knights had also been fully healed. The group started moving again, and during this time, Xianlan, who was walking beside Ren, asked him, "Are you a royal noble?" "A noble? No, I'm just a commoner," Ren calmly said. And this made Xianlan even more surprised. "A commoner? But you're so strong." "Is a commoner not allowed to be strong?" Ren said coldly. Hearing this, Xianlan voiced his own doubts. "Not only that, but the way you talk is as if you're his superior." Ren was a bit confused, so Xianlan explained, "As a martial artist, I know you're confident and can speak on equal terms with Sir Stepan, but I don't think you should do the same with Sir Edward, because he's over 40 years old." The priest's words also made Ren realize a few things. "That's right, I'm only 22 in this life. I need to be more careful with my words and actions." Thinking this, he replied, "I'm not good at interacting with others, so I don't really understand etiquette." And not long after, the group arrived in front of a certain door. Xian, who was leading the group, saw it and immediately opened the door, and the scene inside was truly eye-popping. Following their gaze, inside the room was a giant goat-headed monster. The name of this monster was Grish, and as soon as it saw the group, it let out a furious roar. And with just that sound, it created powerful gusts of wind that blew towards them. Back to Ren. At that moment, he looked at Grease with some confusion, wondering, why is that thing here? I'm sure it's not supposed to be. Meanwhile, Stepan, who was in front of him, grimly gripped his sword and said, "It seems this demon is the guardian of this place." "I know, but hasn't anyone dealt with it yet?" Ren thought to himself. Then he offered advice to the group. "Let's go back. It's too difficult to defeat that thing with our current strength." And at that very moment, suddenly, a knight noticed something and quickly shouted, "Sir, look at the sword that demon is holding!" Following the knight's words, Stepan also hurriedly observed the demon's sword and exclaimed in shock, "Huh? That's the Antian demon sword." And after seeing his family's lost sword, he tightly gripped his own sword and slowly drew it. Seeing this, Edward quickly asked, "Sir, are you really planning to confront that demon?" "Obviously," Stepan replied coldly. And these suicidal words made Edward hastily try to dissuade him. "That's too dangerous. We should return to the family to gather more forces. We already know the sword is here." But his reasonable words were refuted by the hot-blooded Stepan. "What are you talking about? Don't you see the great knight's sword being defiled? I cannot retreat. I will reclaim that sword at all costs, even if that sword is in the hands of the Grim Reaper. Everyone, charge!" Following his words, the remaining knights became fired up and roared loudly. Meanwhile, after seeing their actions, Ren could only grumble to himself, "What a bunch of idiots." In the ruins of the Silver Age, the spatial rift has a system designed to automatically compensate for its own flaws. However, due to an incident, the supernatural monsters in this place were imprisoned and controlled by the defense system. In other words, these creatures are also known as dungeon guardians. They were living freely, but were kidnapped and forced to work as dungeon guards. Moreover, these monsters have merged with the ruined system and gained its power, making them much more formidable creatures. And this bunch even managed to kill Ji, who was said to be the god of light. If a demon of a higher class than Tag Grandin becomes a dungeon guardian, it must possess power on a completely different level than the other demons here. Back to Stepan, he turned around and shouted to his knights, "That monster is chained up. Are you so cowardly that you'd fear a chained enemy?" And at his words, Ren, standing behind, could only shake his head in exasperation and turn to Edward. "Are you guys really going to fight it? There's no chance of winning. You'll all die." And at his words, Edward just calmly turned and said, "I am very grateful for your help, but in the end, you're just a barbarian with no honor. In this world, there are things worth risking your life for." After hearing this, Renhat just wanted to slap him a few times. The word risk is only used when there's a chance of winning, but what chance do you possibly have of defeating it? Turning back to Edward. At this moment, he began to raise his sword high and shouted, "O Knights of Antian, stake your lives and show your courage!" After speaking, he began to charge forward, much to Renhat's confusion. "You guys couldn't even take down a Tigran, so what can you possibly do against this monster?" Meanwhile, on the side, Priest Shin Lan had also used his blessing skill to empower the knights, Goddess Philonon. "May the goddess's blessing be upon everyone." And right after his words, the knights' bodies were enveloped in a pink light, and the knights, seeing they had been empowered, eagerly charged forward and slashed straight at the monster's maw. "Begone, you demon!" The two of them shouted, but unfortunately, their attack couldn't even leave a scratch on Grease, and right after, it grabbed the demon's sword Antian and slashed them until blood sprayed. Meanwhile, Renhat, watching from behind as the knights charged in only to be sent flying, could only shake his head and say, "Tsk, I told you so. It's useless." And just as he said that, Renhat saw Stepan being sent flying towards him and casually sidestepped to avoid him. Good lord, this guy flies in a different way every time. After saying that, Renhat focused on the battle and thought to himself, the whole group is almost wiped out. They're getting beaten to a pulp by this grease. Yet I don't understand why they still have the confidence to charge in. And at this moment, perhaps seeing the knights getting thrashed so badly, Stepan's voice rang out again. Don't lose your fighting spirit. We are the Knights of Antian. Even that demon fears our courage. Turning back to Renhat. By now, he had a pretty good assessment of this Stepan guy. I think I've got a handle on this Stepan guy now. It's like talking to a brick wall. No matter what you say, he won't listen. At least that Edward fellow is relatively realistic and probably understands the monster's power to some extent. As for Stepan, it's true he's been fighting Gris up until now, but to put it simply, he just flies in and gets knocked right back out. And although he managed to stab the monster a few times, to be honest, he only caused minor scratches. With a body that massive, those wounds are nothing more than mosquito bites. Turning to Sin Lan, at this point, even the priest had to join the battle directly. O goddess Philanans, please bring down your holy mace upon that evil creature. As this chant rang out, the giant mace above Shin Lan swung powerfully towards the monster Grizz, causing its entire body to slump down. But it wasn't over yet. Shin Lan continued to pose and mutter, O goddess Philanans, unleash the holy mace and help us defeat the monster. And just like that, countless giant spectral maces hurtled towards Grizz. And taking the opportunity while the massive monster was dealing with the giant maces, the girl Lenia nimbly leaped onto its head and unleashed several slashes, causing the monster to roar in pain. Stepan, seeing this from below, had to say, Great job, Lenia. And even Renhat, who had been observing all this time, had to offer some praise. This Lenia kid's skills are pretty impressive. She's even better than Edward. You could say she's the second strongest in this group. And as he thought this, he couldn't help but wonder, am I underestimating them too much? And while he was still pondering, Todd up front began to use his magic to support the group. Icy north wind from my hand, swirl into a blizzard. And as soon as his incantation was complete, a snow tornado appeared, right on the monster Grizz's position. Everyone was fighting pretty well, and their teamwork was quite coordinated. Everything seemed to be going well until the energy circuits on the wall suddenly changed from blue to a reddish-orange. Next, the sound of chains being pulled taut rang out, and then the inevitable happened. Suddenly, a mechanical voice was heard. Current defense system overwhelmed, therefore, shifting to phase 2. And right after this announcement finished, all the stone slabs that were imprisoning, the restraints holding the monster Grebus instantly shattered. Witnessing this, Reffin's expression hardened as he snarled, Damn it! Turning his attention to Grebus. As soon as it was freed from the chains that held it, it leaped into the air. Then, it used the momentum of its fall to stomp its 2 feet right onto the 2 knights below. The stomp was so powerful that it caused the entire floor to erupt instantly. But that wasn't all. Right after taking down these 2 knights, it went on a rampage, swinging its sword wildly. Facing such a terrifying, unrestrained monster, the knights were like fruit in a fruit-slicing game, and while Gerbus was in a bloodthirsty frenzy, Stefan somehow snuck up above its head and shouted, Die, you monster! With that, he intended to swing his sword straight at the monster's head. But before he could even strike, it landed a punch right in his stomach. The devastating blow made Stefan cough up blood instantly. Then his entire body was sent flying like a cannonball into the wall behind him. Seeing this, Edward cried out in alarm, Prince Stefan! Stefan managed to reply, Sir Edward! Edward breathed a sigh of relief seeing he could still speak. Thank God, you're safe. Then, Stefan and Lenia charged forward to attack at the same time, and with her agile speed, Lenia leaped into the air and unleashed a flurry of slashes at the monster. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough to even pose a threat to the monster. In fact, it quickly countered with a blow that made Lenia spit up blood instantly. Next, Gerbus opened its mouth as wide as it could and gathered a flame in its throat. And once enough firepower was charged, it puffed out its cheeks and shot the pillar of fire forward. The power of this attack was simply indescribable. The knights in its path could only scatter like ducks. Although they tried to run, they were no match for the speed of the attack. With its immense power, even the aftershock was enough to overwhelm the knights. Grebes just kept spitting out blasts as if it had unlimited ammo, and very quickly, one of the attacks targeted Shin Lan. Seeing the attack rushing towards her, Shin Lan's eyes widened as if she were about to cry. But luckily, at the critical moment, Refin stepped in to shield her with his protective circle skill. With this incredible defensive skill, he safely protected them both. He even used his 2 hands to completely deflect the flames to the sides. Sorry, my reaction was a bit slow, Refin said to Shin Lan. Then he stared intently at the hulking monster and thought, A Gerbus? Can I handle it? To be honest, I'm a little curious. I wonder what my current power limit is, and whether the martial arts of this body can handle that demon. When I was a mage, I always avoided gambles where I had no chance of winning. But now I'm a warrior. I feel a thrill when facing a strong opponent. This is a feeling I never had in my past life. It seems I've come a long way as a martial artist. Master would probably be happy to see this. Master said that when you don't know your opponent's strength, you should just attack first, right? With that thought, Rifen began to unleash a barrage of long-range punches at Gurbis. With each punch, a pillar of light shot out from his hand toward the monster. This was the key blast skill. These attacks made the monster Gurbis cry out in pain, but it quickly retaliated with a slash aimed at Rifen. Fortunately, Rifen managed to duck and narrowly dodge it, but it still left a small cut on his chest, forcing him to be more cautious. This powerful body can deflect even a steel sword, but a demon sword can actually injure me a little, Rifen thought to himself. And just as he had that thought, the monster opposite him raised one leg and slammed its giant shell right into him. As a result, he was sent flying backward like a rocket. The wall behind him exploded instantly from the impact of his body. Seeing this, Shinlan hurriedly cried out, "Rifen, I'm fine," Rifen replied as he began to walk out of the small crater his body had made. His body was completely enveloped in his own aura, and Silan's eyes widened at the sight. My God, is this the power of a divine light wielder? Back to Rifen Hat, he began to crack his neck and thought, if I can hold my ground, I'll have a chance to counterattack. I've gotten used to this after training with my master. Maybe I should use this opportunity to refine my technique a little. And Gurbis, seeing that Rifen Hat was completely unscathed by its kick, began to roar in some incomprehensible language. Seeing this, Rifen Hat charged towards it and said, I don't know what you're saying, but bring it on. Just like that, they both started trading blows head-on, with no thought for defense or evasion. Meanwhile, Stepan, having recovered a bit after resting, was now witnessing the battle between the two. And upon seeing the aura enveloping Rifen Hat's body, he was in disbelief. This presence. How can a low-class nobody with no fame or reputation possibly use aura? Something that even a high-ranking noble can't obtain? And the more he watched the fight, the more anxious and incredulous his expression became. What the hell? Impossible. Just who is this guy? Where did he even come from? What kind of monster is he? From his perspective, the battle was slowly tipping in Rifen Hat's favor, as he furiously pummeled the goat-headed monster until its tongue hung out. But just as quickly, the beast counterattacked with a devastating slash. Fortunately, Rifen Hat's quick reflexes allowed him to dodge just in time, but the slash was incredibly powerful. Its impact alone shattered the floor into countless fragments. Back with Rifen Hat, for some reason, the more he fought, the more thrilled he became, fighting these monsters. I can feel just how incredible everything I've learned has been. I can easily see through their slow attacks. As he thought this, he launched an explosive punch straight at the monster Gurbis's face, tearing a large gash across its face. But even so, it didn't seem to pose a serious threat to Gurbis, or more accurately, the guardians of the ruins won't fall even when injured, because the ruins provide them with mana to heal their wounds. Just as Rifen Hat had this thought, it seemed the ruins themselves began to pump mana into the monster at full capacity, to the point where visible energy veins appeared on its body. And overflowing with energy, it opened its maw, gathering flames in its throat to unleash a fire breath attack. Rifen Hat recognized the attack and easily dodged the moment it opened its mouth. He even took advantage of it being stationary to charge forward, leap up, and grab onto its arm. Then, he delivered a swift kick straight to the two-horned monster's snout, causing it to cough up blood, but he wasn't done yet. Rifen Hat started laughing maniacally as he unleashed a barrage of fists on it, practicing joint locks, aerial combat, and striking techniques. This is the absolute best punching bag. As he thought this, Rifen Hat landed a powerful punch right on the monster's snout, making its eyes bulge. At this point, it was a completely one-sided fight, with the monster Gurbis having become a literal punching bag. However, Rifen Hat glanced over at the knights and thought, but I can't just keep messing around like this. If I want to end this in one blow, I should use the calamitous sound wave. But if I do that, this place will collapse, and we'll all be buried alive. It's so annoying having all these people holding me back. Just then, Tot, seeing that Rifen Hat was dominating but not finishing the fight, shouted, Rifen, use your sword. You can defeat it with your sword enveloped in aura and a sacred chant. Hearing this, Rifen Hat thought to himself, you think I don't already know that? Then, Rifen Hat yelled back, I don't know how to envelop a weapon with aura. His words made Tot question if he'd heard him right. What did you just say? Tot screamed. Rifen Hat explained with annoyance, I only know how to apply aura to my body. It's ridiculous, I know. That's just how my martial school is. Tot was bewildered. Just then, Silan, behind Rifen Hat, suddenly had an idea and yelled out, Rifen, that body of yours is pretty tough, right? Hearing this, Rifen Hat was a little confused, but he gritted his teeth and replied, tough? Well, yeah, it's pretty strong. Great. From now on, I will cast my embodiment on you. Ah, no. I mean, the blessing of Phelan. After saying that, he began to mutter an incantation. Phelans, please bless this sword in your name. And as soon as the incantation ended, Ryfan's entire body was enveloped in a blessed aura. However, it seemed this enhancement placed immense pressure on his body, causing Ryfanhat to scream out in pain. He then gritted his teeth to endure it, using all his strength to hoist the goat-headed monster off the ground. Then, he hurled the monster, slamming it into the ceiling above. With the monster temporarily pinned up there, Ryfan finally had a moment to rest and shot a look at Exlon as if he were insane. The Sacred Armament Enchantment. This spell is typically cast on metal objects, and he used it on a human body? He's so good-looking, but he's completely insane. Back to Exlan. Seeing the monster get suppressed, he cheered excitedly. It worked! Now, beat that bastard monster to death, he said cheerfully. Hearing this, Ryfanhat gritted his teeth and charged forward. Might as well get this over with quickly. With that thought, he closed in on Grast and delivered a kick straight to its chin. This was the holy kick. And following that kick, Ryfan immediately slammed his knee into the beast, a move called the Holy Knee. Finally, Ryfanhat began to gather power in his fist and unleashed an uppercut straight into the massive monster's body. This was the Holy Fist. The incredibly powerful punch sent the monster's gigantic body flying off the ground. Then, immediately,